Imagine a field of pale, milky poppies swaying under the early sun. Long before empires clashed over spice routes and sea lanes, this quiet flower was already rewriting human history. The opium poppy, Papaver somniferum, began as a healer, a ritual plant, and a bridge between ancient cultures. From Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley, early physicians discovered its uncanny ability to dull pain, soften grief, and hush anxieties. Sumerian tablets even called it the plant of joy. Traders carried it across continents, embedding it into the medical knowledge of Egypt, Persia, Greece, and Rome. It soothed emperors, soldiers, peasants, and poets alike. Yet beneath its gentle glow, a darker truth simmered. Every civilization that embraced the poppy discovered its shadow. Empires used it to control populations, physicians misused it to excess, and smugglers found profit in dependency. By the time global trade expanded in the 17th century, opium was no longer just a medical remedy. It was a commodity with the power to reshape geopolitics. This is where our story begins, with a simple flower that carried the seeds of empire, addiction, and war. By the 1700s, the British East India Company had become more than a trading corporation. It was a private empire, and it needed money, enormous sums. Enter opium. The company saw in this ancient drug a perfect solution. It was easy to cultivate in Bengal, addictive, and always in demand in China. With military-backed monopolies, the British forced Indian farmers to grow poppies under harsh contracts, often leaving villages impoverished. Raw opium was processed in Calcutta's grim factories, packed into chests, and funneled toward Canton through a growing network of smugglers. China resisted. The Qing government repeatedly banned the drug, warning that it was draining silver, degrading officials, and crippling society. Yet the British continued to smuggle it aggressively, a deliberate strategy to correct their trade deficit. This chapter marks the moment when opium stopped being a trade good and became a tool of statecraft. The company's profits soared, while China's internal stability eroded. Two competing visions of world order were now on a collision course, and both were fueled by the powder packed inside those wooden chests. Picture the bustling port of Canton in the early 1800s, junks crowding the harbor, foreign merchants negotiating behind closed doors, and Qing officials racing to control an epidemic spiraling beyond their reach. As British and American traders funneled more opium into China, millions became dependent. Families pawned heirlooms, soldiers deserted, and officials fell asleep during court sessions, pipes still warm in their hands. Smugglers operated floating warehouses offshore. Criminal syndicates rose to power, while honest traders vanished under the weight of corruption. The Qing dynasty, already strained by internal revolts, watched helplessly as opium hollowed out its institutions. In 1839, the imperial commissioner Lin Zechu arrived in Canton with a mission: end the opium trade at any cost. His confiscation and destruction of 20,000 chests became the spark Britain needed. Rather than negotiate, the British government declared war, not to protect its citizens, but to protect its narcotics revenue. The First Opium War had begun. The First Opium War was not a clash of equals. British steam-powered gunboats cut through Qing defenses with ruthless efficiency. Coastal forts fell, armies collapsed, entire cities negotiated surrender before the fighting even reached them. The Treaty of Nanjing, 1842, forced China to open ports, pay indemnities, and cede Hong Kong. Yet the humiliation did not end there. As Western demands increased, a second Opium War erupted. More gunboats, more concessions. Eventually, China was carved into spheres of influence, a painful chapter the Chinese still refer to as the century of humiliation. Meanwhile, opium flowed more freely than ever. British profits soared, American traders joined the race, and Chinese society plunged deeper into dependency. Opium was no longer just a drug. It had become a geopolitical lever that reshaped Asia's balance of power. As the 19th century closed, opium's shadow stretched across continents. In India, farmers resented forced cultivation that kept them in debt. In China, addiction remained widespread despite government suppression. In Britain, moral reformers finally pressured Parliament to examine the ethics of a trade built on human misery. By the early 20th century, the British Empire faced a contradiction it could no longer ignore. It claimed to civilize the world while profiting from a narcotic that destabilized nations. International outrage grew, culminating in the 1909 Shanghai Opium Commission and later the League of Nations Drug Conventions. Opium had enriched the empire, but it had also damaged its moral authority. The system that once seemed unbreakable began to fracture. Revolutions ignited in China, nationalism surged in India, and anti-colonial movements gained strength. In the end, the powder that built the British Empire also highlighted its deepest hypocrisies. Today, the legacy of opium survives in unexpected forms. Modern narcotics, morphine, heroin, fentanyl, trace their lineage to the same poppy fields that once fed the East India Company's coffers. Countries scarred by the 19th century trade still grapple with its political and cultural fallout. Borders, economies, and diplomatic relationships bear the imprint of the Opium Wars. But the story is not merely about the past. It is about a world still shaped by the decisions of those who saw profit where others saw ruin. As we close this narrative, consider how a single flower altered global history and how its consequences continue to unfold.